Welcome to Raging Moderates. I'm Scott Galloway.
And I'm Jessica Tarlov.
In today's episode of Raging Moderates, Jess, we're discussing how Trump has overflooded the zone, how he's trying to remake DC in his image, and Bad Bunny's influence in this moment. If you aren't already, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube page to get up-to-date coverage on everything happening. We're doing more and more hot takes. And if you want to stay abreast of current events, please subscribe. All right, let's get into it. This past week feels like a masterclass in how Trump floods the zone. The Justice Department dumps more than 3 million pages of Epstein files, heavy on Trump references, light on new facts after months of delay. Instantly devouring, swallowing, occupying the news cycle. At the same time, a whistleblower complaint involving Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard remains so classified Congress still hasn't seen it months after it was filed. And in Georgia, the FBI seizes 2020 ballots, with Trump reportedly inserting himself directly into an active investigation. That Georgia move comes as Trump openly calls for Republicans to nationalize the voting, reviving his baseless claims about stolen elections and previewing interesting things he says will emerge from seized ballots. Each story on its own raises red flags. Together, they show or reflect a familiar strategy: move fast, create noise, overwhelm attention. Jess, how do we break this down? Where do you want to start?
I feel like we have to start with how overwhelmed everyone is.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if it's something that is weighing on you, like it's weighing on me, but I feel like someone is sitting on my chest basically every time that I have to prepare for something, or even to talk to a friend who I know is interested in politics, or doesn't even have to be interested in politics anymore. I mean, these stories are breaking through to normie folks that are going about their business. You know, my friend's asking, do you know a place where I can get an objective take on what's in these Epstein files? I had no answer for her. Right. I can't even point to major publications to say that they've been doing a good job of ingesting these files or telling us what's in them. Being able to cull through 3 million documents in, a matter of hours is impossible. There were huge mistakes made also that, naked images were released at first, names of survivors unredacted that had to be, taken down from the DOJ site. And, it's like a poo-poo platter of hellscapes that you can pick from with what's going on in this news cycle. Epstein, the 2020 election ballots, Donald Trump's conversation with Dan Bongino, which I want to get into, the story about a sheikh buying a 49% stake in the Trump family crypto account 4 days before inauguration. I mean, that should be a presidency-ending story on its own. And the Wall Street Journal did a huge investigation into it, and I feel like it barely made it into most people's algorithms because of how much is being flooded. And I went back and revisited Steve Bannon's original flood the zone comment and from 2019, and he said, every day we hit them with 3 things. They'll bite on one and we'll get all our stuff done. Bang, bang, bang. 3 things? 3 things would be the slowest news day of the Trump administration. It's like 10 things on a daily basis. And I'm feeling like I can't keep up, and this responsibility to the people out there who depend on us, right, to be a good filter for this and to have a well-informed perspective. And I don't want to let people down either with a rush to judgment about some of these things. They're complicated issues too. And so I'm stressed. How are you?
Yeah, I think overwhelmed, and I keep trying to parse how much of it is I just get older and more depressed, or if this really is alarming. And I've decided it's a mix of
It's
of
definitely
both.
alarming.
But they definitely understand. All right, the Epstein files are coming out. Let's talk about nationalizing election, which is nothing but an attempt to pervert democracy. One thing that came out that's not getting any attention, that would be the impeachment-ready news item of any other administration of the past 50 years, is that essentially it looks like we have a sheikh from the UAE, Tanoon bin Zayed Al Nahyan, I apologize if I got that wrong, who's a UAE national security advisor. He signed a deal to purchase a 49% stake in the Trump family crypto venture, World Liberty Financial. So that's approximately $190 million directly to Trump family entities. And what do you know, a couple months later, Trump admin approved a framework allowing the UAE to purchase 500,000 advanced AI chips annually. And the big fear is that these chips, which are essentially kind of the information age version of plutonium in the wrong hands, they serve as nuclear guidance systems, GPS for missiles, submarine navigation chips. I mean, this is our most sensitive military items are instructed, maintain rare earth materials, and are all powered by or guided by some form of AI sophisticated chips. And I just want to set some historical context because the president seems to be down with it or is the beneficiary of these bribes. We've just sort of lost all historical context. And I just want to take us back to the 50s, and that is Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. And they were associated with communist circles in the 30s and 40s, and they were accused of espionage for the Soviet Union. But the similarities to me are striking, and that is the passing of sensitive information that could make an adversary more dangerous and lethal to our security interests, an attempt to keep it quiet on the lowdown. But the outcomes here are much different. In one instance, the scientist and his wife were put in an electric chair. And in another, we have people advising the president to release more and more documents that allege he might have engaged in pedophilia. I mean, just to give you a sense of just how far our democracy and our perception of the rule of law and what it means to be a patriot or commit treason, how much it's gone just 180. Anyone who studies history just looks at what has gone on here and said many of these actions would have traditionally put people in electric chairs. Anyways, that's where I am. I'm a little bit depressed.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
So
just
yeah,
since
the
you gave me
answer is
those
I'm
2
not doing well.
options, like, are these big stories or am I just depressed? And I was leaning towards just big stories, but now I'm like,
Now you're
we
depressed?
gotta
It's
get you
like
to a doctor. No, I like it though. It's good dramatic effect at the top of the episode. But while you were talking, it made me think about just even the history of what's gone on during the Trump administration in terms of sharing secrets and all of the interplay between the administration and foreigners from getting them to stay at Trump International in DC. What we know from the Mar-a-Lago documents case that Jack Smith had, which, most people admit, Republican or Democrat, was the most ironclad case, right, where he had all of our secrets sitting in ballrooms and in bathrooms. And there was a story about the Australian billionaire who was there that was talking about our submarine capacities too, because everything's just a big party, right? And no matter
yeah.
what's going on in the world, you show up at Mar-a-Lago and there's a girl in a martini glass, right? Because you can't stop the fun in MAGA world. I think that is an apt story to use and kind of comparison to the current moment. And that's why this is flummoxing and disturbing so many people who have not only studied history, but just have been alive for longer than 5 minutes. You talk to Gen Zs about our current political moment, and they all say, we know nothing but Donald Trump, right? Like
Yeah.
they don't know another.
Yeah. Who was Obama again? Yeah.
Well, I mean, hope and change is a pipe dream at
Yeah.
best for them. But the Biden years, he was obviously president, but it was still even dominated by Trump vibes, right? And this fight for democracy and conversations around us versus them and the magnification of the right. And then 2024 took a lot of those young people with them. It seems like they're coming back, but it still happened. And just to kind of hone in on the Epstein story for a second, like 2 major things are really sticking out to me. One, how hard it is to get people to actually care about young women being sex trafficked and raped and abused, and this huge, alleged pedophilia ring that was going on. And I saw a post on social that really struck me about like how it wasn't enough to hear from thousands of women that this was going on, right? That we had to, see the evidence like this. And even for some people, they still don't care, right? Like you can see the documents and have heard testimony from these brave women who talked about what has happened to them over decades and still doesn't even move the needle. I'm no more convinced today than I was ever that there will be any accountability for folks involved in this. I mean, some people will lose their jobs. I assume Peter Attia, the longevity influencer, who was just hired as CBS contributor, and wrote emails like, "Pussy is indeed low carb, still awaiting results on gluten content, though." Like, I don't know how you live with yourself if you actually can type things like that and then hit send. But the more disturbing email, I guess, that he sent was, "The biggest problem with becoming friends with you," this is Jeffrey Epstein, "the life you lead is so outrageous, and yet I can't tell a soul, dot, dot, dot." Like, these guys knew what was going on, right? And anyone pretending otherwise needs to have their heads examined or just go into hiding. But I think that this statement about whether we actually have a functioning government is the most important takeaway from it, because you see how essentially Epstein was running like a Soviet style business or governance institute almost, where he was doing favors across all aspects of our society, not just people involved in politics, but business, the arts, culture. You have the highfalutin academics that are in on this as well. And you see that we actually have our democracy leaves such room for power vacuums that bad actors can step into, like an Epstein, and the willingness of people, no matter how they vote or what kind of political or moral values they purport to have, just not just get sucked in, but willingly jump in feet first and are so excited by it. And I mean, you hang out with titans of industry all the time, and you definitely spend more time with rich and powerful men than I do. But are they really this gross? Like, is this the standard to which I should assume people who have these kinds of jobs and run the biggest law firms in the world and banks and, people who really should be the cream of the crop are guys who are talking about, how low carb pussy is? Because I feel like I can't live like that. And I don't want to send my kids off into this world to go work at these organizations. And they might be finding out later that, the head of the firm was sending things like this or visiting the island, even just knowing that somebody behaved like this and being okay with it. And shout out to the people who pushed back, like Norm Finkelstein, the leftist academic, Tina Brown's team at the Daily Beast, really putting Epstein through the ringer, saying, like, if you want to come and talk to us, we're bringing a reporter with us. Like, that's how you handle Jeffrey Epstein. But mostly you just saw a lot of people who were downright charmed by somebody that they knew was into 12-year-olds.
Yeah, so I think the collective answer from the two of us, if people ask, are you all right, reminds me of um, the Quentin Tarantino film Pulp Fiction, when Vin Rames is raped with a gag ball, and Bruce Willis says to him, "Are you all right?" And he says, "I'm pretty fucking far from all right." It's just like, this stuff is, I think if you're feeling, I don't know, Mel Robbins or Esther Perel, I think if you're feeling very stressed and anxious around this stuff, I think that's the correct response. With respect to Epstein, the thing that struck me, so you asked me a question. I love to have a good time. I love to go to foreign environments where there's a ton of people partying and dancing on tables. I've had the opportunity to party with very wealthy, powerful men. There's a small group of men who are very, very wealthy and will rent boats and create environments that oftentimes involve a party atmosphere, and not just young women, but young men, to kind of like create more of a party atmosphere. And sometimes you walk into these events and you think, okay, this is a little inappropriate. Some people would describe New York as that you go into a lot of these social establishments and it's a lot of guys in their 40s and 50s who are wealthy and a lot of women in their 20s and 30s. I've seen that. And as you get older, you start thinking, okay, I don't need to be involved in this environment. This just feels sketchy. And anything you wouldn't feel comfortable bringing your partner to, you don't do. But there's a lot of wealthy people doing that all over the world. That's kind of what fuels St. Bart's, Saint-Tropez, and these Master of the Universe, Ibiza places in the kind of key moments around the year. Is very wealthy men and the people who kind of their posse of people, which oftentimes involves women younger than them. That is a far cry. I have never seen or witnessed any situation with famous people or wealthy people like this on an island or in any environment with underage girls. I have never seen that. And as a matter of fact, when I was in Davos, I was hanging out with a bunch of different people, including a globally known actor and a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And we were going to an after hours thing of a guy. This guy was a VC and he rents out a big room, drinks, fun, party, a DJ. And we walked in and there were just more women than men. And the women weren't young, but there were more women than men. And both of them kind of looked at me and said, "We can't be here." And that's their view. Is like, look, nothing illegal is going on here, but this is just the wrong impression for me, my family, my shareholders, and the media. I can't be here. This is just not the environment. The people I represent, the constituents I represent back home, my shareholders, my family, my wife, this just isn't, I shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And that's the correct response. And I think I would think, okay, I was in New York in the 90s and the 2000s. I love to party. I'm in constant alcohol-fueled environments with wealthy people creating a scene. This is like nothing. It's hard to even imagine that these people would have such extraordinarily poor judgment to not believe that this would get out and that this would ruin their careers and their families and potentially land them in prison. And a couple of the observations I had when I saw the more salacious parts of this was, one, we overuse the word pedophilia in the sense that pedophilia, I believe, is a psychiatric condition, a disorder when you are unnaturally sexually drawn to minors and children. And there are pedophiles who recognize they suffer from this and they seek help such that they never act on it because they realize it's wrong. I actually don't think, while some of these individuals may be guilty of pedophilia in the criminal sense, I don't think they're pedophiles. I think there's something even worse. And that is, they're not, I don't want to call it suffering from an affliction. I wouldn't say that about pedophiles because I don't want to let them off the hook. But these individuals aren't the classic term or medical, clinical definition of pedophiles. What they are is individuals who have become so powerful, so wealthy, and so delusional about what they are entitled to and the lack of any guardrails or structural or social mores that they are entitled to adhere to, that they can literally do anything. Oh, I can hang out with a guy. Yeah, maybe he was a pedophile, maybe he wasn't, but he throws fucking amazing parties. And if I'm on an island and I get fucked up, there's a report that a man in his 50s, a fairly, important person, impregnated an 11-year-old. And this stuff is the level of entitlement and immunity they feel. And then my second point is, unfortunately, all of this is stirred into one amorphous blob. And I think as a critical thinker, you need to distinguish and parse these people into distinct groups. First off, there are people who need to be criminally prosecuted. There's enough evidence about people who actually committed child rape, who trafficked in it, who've provided the infrastructure for it and facilitated that. There needs to be indictments and criminal prosecutions. There's a second concentric circle that's much bigger of people who thought, this guy's fun, I get to meet powerful people, I get to be around hot young women in a party environment, that's fun for me. Maybe I grew up working my ass off, I never had access to this kind of thing, that's fun. Those people, I think individuals have to decide how much they want to shame them. Should that person be the CEO of the company? Should they vote for that person? Should they listen to that person's podcast? But there's a big line, I think, between that and committing child rape. And then there's an even bigger concentric circle. And let me be clear, the smart thing to do here as a podcaster is just to blame everybody and roll your eyes and be totally disgusted. But there are a lot of people here who were in the wrong place at the wrong time, who thought they were going to an event about philanthropy and technology and don't do diligence on everyone they're having dinner with. Katie Couric had to come out and apologize because she went to a dinner that Jeffrey Epstein was at. I think that was the right thing to do, but quite frankly, I don't think she owes anybody an apology. I don't conduct due diligence on everyone that invites me to dinner. So unfortunately, what I think we need is more criminal prosecutions for the inner circle and quite frankly, more grace for the outer ring. Because what I see is that everyone conflates is conflating people who have committed heinous crimes with people who are in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I don't disagree with you, and this is a similar conversation that we were having at the height of Me Too, when everyone was putting, like, Harvey Weinstein and Al Franken in the same bucket. Yeah, it's like, that's obviously insane, and I am not trying to do that at all, and I think part of what I'm reflecting, and some of this is definitely maternal, that, I have 2 little girls at home, right, that are going to head out into the world, and that there are going to be men that look at them when they're 11 to 14 years old and find them attractive, grown men, not just like little boys to have your first boyfriend, girlfriend, and kiss and maybe get to second base. Stirs something in me so fierce that I'm having trouble containing it. And that's where I would say, yes, there are wrong place and wrong time folks in this, and the way that the files work, and also the fact that he received a ton of newspaper clippings. So there are lots of names that were just in newspaper clippings that are now, quote unquote, in the Epstein files, where those people certainly don't deserve to be in there. But majority of the people that were interacting with him, even if it was cursory, was after he had been convicted of sex trafficking. That goes back to 2008. Right, so you say, "I don't do due diligence on everybody whose house I go to, for a dinner party." I
Yeah.
totally get that,
Yeah.
but I would put money on the fact that you haven't gone to a convicted sex trafficker's house for dinner.
Yeah, not that I know of. Although did you hear, you didn't listen to Pivot yesterday. Kara said, I was so relieved I did a search and I'm so relieved you're not in the Epstein files.
Oh.
I'm like, you thought I was in the Epstein files? You said something though. Let me be clear, Jess. I get invites all the time. The luckiest thing that ever happened to me is I'm an introvert that enjoys hanging out with my dogs and my kids.
Yeah.
So I turn down 98% of invites unless someone's
You
paying
even
me.
turn down invites from me,
Well, there you
and
go. I'm just my favorite thing is Netflix, edibles, my dogs, and my kids, and that's about it. Everything else, I'm not especially interested in. But anyways, which pays off. It ends up in many of these instances. But you said something that's really interesting, and I want to comment on. You have a natural, healthy parental reaction where you think, I want to protect my children and other people's children here, and we need to create a series of incentives where if you're some wealthy guy who's fallen under the illusion that you can get away with anything, and you think, oh, wouldn't it be fun to have sex with a really young girl? And I'm not going to worry if she's 18 or not. And it's drug or alcohol infused, and you rationalize your way into child rape. You need to know there is a very good chance, a more than likely chance, you're going to go to prison where no one cares how rich you are. And that incentive has not been put in place clearly to the extent it needs to be put in place. Now, the sad thing is, if you look at the data, is that predators and people who traffic in these types of crimes, and this is what makes Ghislaine Maxwell's crime so depraved, is they are very good at targeting potential victims. And they purposely, and this was true in the Catholic Church with pedophile abuse there, or pedophilia there, they have a tendency to seek out and target kids from low-income, single-parent homes. And a lot of pedophiles will say, if the dad is present, if I see a dad drop off someone at school, I would avoid that kid. And if you look at the victims of in the Catholic Church, if you look at the victims in the Epstein case, most of the time it was boys and girls from low-income homes, oftentimes single-parent homes. And that is, they didn't have active involvement, protection, people all over them. Because the reality is, upper-income homes can afford lawyers. They have the time to invest in understanding what the kid is up to. And also, and this sounds sexist, but the presence of a male very involved in the kid's life tends to be like, there's all the studies, the best security system you can have is a dog. It's better than alarms. It's better than gates. Criminals just avoid dogs. They avoid homes with dogs. It's like, okay, go to the next one. This one has a dog. The presence of an involved father tends to be one of the greatest impediments to people who purposely seek out and target victims of their crimes. And this kind of goes back to a lot of what affects the US around big tech, around, quite frankly, males who aren't as worried about the problems of sexual assault as they should be. It's that when you're never victimized, you have trouble empathizing with victims. If you're a dude who's 6'2", 200 pounds, you're just not as worried about men on the subway. You don't perceive those dangers and that discomfort. And when you're upper income and you're all over your kids all the time, you're not as worried. You're outraged, but it's not as big a threat to you. And there needs to be a new set of incentives. There needs to be more thoughtful discernment and parsing of these people in the Epstein files. In some, more criminal prosecutions and more grace around the people who ended up at a fundraiser that or are on some list of
Yeah.
invites that he sent out. Because right now, courtesy of the Trump administration, bribes from the UAE to send classified IP and technology. They're funding my kid's crypto scam. We want to nationalize elections. Why? So we can bastardize elections. But that's before or after we invade Greenland and, throw out 3 million pages of the Epstein files, including accusations against the president.
Yeah.
What I would like to see is a bunch of attorney generals and DAs around the nation in different states start seeking grand jury indictments and start indicting and serving people, even if they get swatted down in the upper level courts or whatever. But I think the nation is screaming for some sort of action from the one branch of government that does not appear to have been fully contaminated, and that is our justice system.
You're so right. I mean, the American people are wanting to be mobilized. They are willing and able, but need direction. And that's the question that we're asking basically every Democrat that we interview, right? Or even the Republicans that are showing backbone against Trump, like the Thomas Masseys of the world and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's obviously not serving anymore, but is, now in full pushback mode. That, you have these moral soldiers ready, but they need to be pointed in a certain direction. And hearing from the president, I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. Frankly, the DOJ, I think, should just say we have other things to do. And then I don't know if you saw that Todd Blanche, the deputy AG, was on with Laura Ingraham last night on Monday night, and he said it's not a crime to party with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, actually, yeah,
It might be.
it might be, because he
Yeah.
was doing crimes. And if you were doing what he was doing, then you deserve to rot in a prison cell. And also consider the fact that Todd Blanche was the guy who went and interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell and put her in that cushy prison. To go back to where I started with, it feels like someone is sitting on my chest. We are being governed by people who have no moral compass to speak of, but who you can't get even to be moved by the fact that there were 12-year-olds that were raped, right? This is, if you want to say, we can excuse away Trump's weird grift stuff, or him talking about Greenland like a crazy person, or blowing up NATO, or selling the Ukrainians out to the Russians, or kowtowing to everyone from the Chinese to the North Koreans, or any dictator will give them the time of day. I guess I could kind of rationalize all that, but I'm watching these fathers, right? I don't know if they have daughters, maybe they're just boy dads, but I think a lot of them have daughters. Excuse away a thing that would cause them to get a gun and show up and kill someone that did this to their kids. And because these girls were poor, because they don't have a personal connection to them, or because power is just more important than anything else, they can sit there and look you in the eye through the camera and just say it's not a crime to party with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, the lack of interest isn't even digging a layer deeper and allowing Trump to walk around saying, I don't know him, I don't know him, when he's shown up in 5,300 Epstein files so far, more than 38,000 references to his name. Some of it is duplicative. This does not mean that he raped anyone, that he is a pedophile. I'm not going down that road. I'm just saying that the comfortability with something so sick and depraved blows all of the other stuff out of the water. It makes it seem like petty crimes, right? That he was like stealing $1 from the cash register when he worked, at a summer job, right? Like taking that money from the UAE if you're comfortable with what happened to these women.
Yeah, but this is a pattern. They take someone's reputation, they give them talking points, they tell them to be forceful and push back, and then they throw the reputation on the funeral pyre. I mean, Pam Bondi is now just, I can't even imagine she's going to get offers to be on boards after, hopefully Trump is booted out of the White House. I think her reputation has just been so,
I think
these are the
Palm Beach
personal,
actually becomes like a colony unto itself after this. And
yeah,
they're all just there and like they can work and make money within itself.
you're
You know what I mean?
probably right. And it's a little bit like cult is the right term. A cult leader typically ends up sexually abusing his cult members, and the men go along with it, and everyone goes along with it. And because of this notion that somehow this person is otherworldly, or a once in a lifetime leader is banned, or like a holy ordained leader is banned, is said about this individual. But when you have the personal lawyers of the president representing the DOJ, it's just one of the greatest institutions in the West, has just obviously been severely, severely impaired. The good news here is I think because of the Me Too movement and what's gone on here, I mean, what's interesting is this notion of being canceled. Peter Attia is getting a ton of attention right now because of these salacious emails that the algorithms love. People can decide whether they want to listen to his podcast. He probably won't be canceled because cancellation usually means you get fired. Matt Lauer could be canceled. Someone who has their own podcast, as long as the audience keeps showing up, some advertisers may leave.
I'm curious what you think, though, on this point, because so he was just hired as a CBS medical contributor. And apparently, Barry Weiss is dug in. This is according to the most recent reporting that I saw. And by the time this comes out, who knows? He could have been let go, but she doesn't believe in cancel culture, right? It's very foundational to the free press. So she's dug in on that side, whereas other people,
I could have predicted that.
you
I knew
know.
Barry.
So you think he should keep the CBS job too?
No, I mean, in my view, there is a point. So I generally believe that for the most part, that you should be your personal life and your political viewpoints. I think it was wrong for that woman, I forget her name, when she expressed a conservative viewpoint, to be fired from The Mandalorian. I don't think, I forget his name, the kid who was master of none, when someone wrote an anonymous letter saying that he did not pick on her visual cues, that she was not enjoying
Oh,
giving
Aziz
him.
Ansari?
Yeah, that she was not enjoying giving him oral sex, that he should have picked up on her non-visual cues, anonymous letter. I think that is way too far. A person who is going to try and establish trust for CBS Evening News, speaking on issues as sensitive as health, should be able to point to their personal life and say that I am concerned about the well-being of other people, and I acquit myself of a certain complexion and format and language in all of my dealings that maintains trust amongst a group of people who are following me for healthcare information. And I think it's reasonable to say that Dr. Attia has lost that trust, and as a result, CBS should not continue employment with him. And for the most part, I don't like cancel culture. I think that people, I like the idea of someday, if you haven't committed a criminal act. I kind of went through this at NYU Stern. His kid and his father were accused of insider trading 3 months before he was graduated. He graduated, and then all the virtue signaling far left wokesters who have lost relevance since they wrote the seminal paper on Gap 2 accounting stood up and convinced everyone that we should expel the kid and not give him his degree. And the reality is that the DOJ and the SEC showed up and said, we're going to put daddy in prison forever unless you cop to it. They were found guilty of insider trading. I'm like, this is a vocational school. He passed accounting. He paid the money. If he hadn't come to school, we wouldn't let him in, fine. And if he'd already graduated, we wouldn't take the degree away. But there's a bunch of people in this room who are going to commit a felony called drunk driving, and we're not going to kick them off the faculty. I generally believe that for the most part, your personal behavior, unless it's criminal behavior, should not impact your professional work and your well-being. And I don't like how all of a sudden people's economic well-being is being in any way connected to their political viewpoint or the way they acquit themselves personally. Having said that, there is a line. And when you're trying to get people to trust you about healthcare and health information, some of those emails just feel like, okay, this is probably the wrong person to maintain the trust of people we are trying to convince that this individual has the credentials and the complexion and the demeanor and the judgment to tell you what types of activities or nutrition or lifestyle to engage in to be healthy. But I could have told you right away that Barry was going to say, no, this is cancel culture. We're holding strong. And a lot of people will agree with her silently. A lot of people will say, oh, this is the Democrats looking for another skin or another head to hang on the wall. This was locker room talk. I wouldn't want my emails published, right? But this feels like, okay, when it comes to health, when it comes to the trust of people that you want to maintain the trust of the CBS halo, if I were Barry, and I'm not, or if she called me and she did not, I probably would have done a slow fade and said, look, it'd be better if you resigned and said, I don't want this scandal to get in the way of the great work of CBS, and I'm going to back away. That's what I would have made that call to him. And I would have said, this needs to be your idea so you can maintain some grace, but he's going to be a distraction. Can you imagine the first time he appears on CBS News?
Totally. And it's going to be every time after that. What I wanted to say was what you're describing is the need and the desire on behalf of basically every normal person for us to have some semblance of moral leadership. And that's for anyone who has a special job. I'm not just talking about, obviously, the leader of the free world, but when you turn on the TV, right, and you see someone who's supposed to know something that you don't know and be there to impart, some information upon you, that you want them to have some good discernment, a good judgment, right, in how they conduct themselves. And we are so desperately lacking in people of good moral stead in positions of power when you see things like this. And I'm not saying it doesn't make people, they can be incredible lawyers, bankers, artists, like all the things. And I know that people are complicated and I'm a bit of a Pollyanna about things and a prude. And so, I'm not here to pass judgment on all of that. But it does feel like as a society that we are really scraping the bottom of the barrel sometimes with the folks that are rising to the top and in how they are conducting themselves. And it's underrated at the time how meaningful it is to have good and decent people in these roles, right? That you never were thinking like, oh, is Barack stepping out on Michelle, right? Or the Bushes or the Reagans. Right, like, it doesn't have to be partisan in any of this. I would really like to respect people that are running society.
There's different shades of gray, though, because I think there's people who are unfaithful, and actually more women are unfaithful. We always assume that women have no agency and that they're these helpless little does that are waiting around to be cheated on. And, there's actually a lot of evidence showing that infidelity is a lot more rampant among married women than we believe and less
And also
among.
emotional affairs versus physical affairs.
And I'm, for the most part, I, I you know, I if President Clinton can bring back peace and prosperity and economic growth and not break laws, what he did, I thought, was reprehensible and an abuse of power with a woman that age. And I've always felt, I think Monica Lewinsky is just an incredibly impressive, smart woman who would have gone on to just do incredible things, and she has gone on to do incredible things. But he showed himself to be infected with this same type of entitlement that if I achieve this level of power, I'm immune from any scrutiny or adherence to any sort of real morality. There's different shades of gray. For the most part, I generally err on the side of I think people are entitled to have secrets. I think when someone's writing a profane email to their friend, you know, you got to say they didn't think it was going to come out. But then when you start layering on, okay, well, he knew what kind of guy this was. This was more than just an irreverent, provocative, profane email between dudes. This was him implying that he knew what he was up to. I mean, it's just you're forced to put on your critical thinking cap a little bit. But There is two negative things that work on different sides of the polls. The first is there are a group of individuals who I think had so little fun or so little adventure romantically and sexually when they were young because they were socially awkward, working all the time, that when they get to this position of power where people are interested in them or pretend to be sexually interested in them, they seem to fall into this level of abuse more easily than other people because they feel they are just no longer subject to any standards. And I would also add that as someone who knows a lot of very powerful, very wealthy people and have gotten to know them pretty well, I find that on average, they're really high character, good people. So one of the most unfortunate things is I do think America is starting to believe that once you become a billionaire, you become a grifter and a pedophile. The billionaires I know, and maybe I'm naive, are actually very high character people who've usually been married for several decades, super philanthropic. And the reason they are billionaires is not because they were born into money, but because they've created so many allies along the way because they're such high character, good people that they've been put in a room of opportunities, even when they're not in that room. So there's this dangerous subset of these really powerful people who've just decided the rules no longer apply to them. On the other side, I do think that if you look anthropologically at how you get prestige and not be shamed and not potentially kicked out of the tribe where you die a slow death or you're eaten, there's two primary characteristics you want to foment. The first is strength, physical strength, to kill things, kill other people, strength of intellect, or you're wise, you're smart, you make good decisions. And one unfortunate way people try to communicate wisdom in a modern age, in a digital age, is that when you insult someone else's character, impress on their soft tissue, and say how outrageous this is, you are essentially saying, by virtue of me judging them and pointing out how wrong what they said is, I have virtue. I am wise. I am someone you should look up to because I can highlight and articulately point out what a bad person they are. And everyone seems to be pursuing their gotcha of guardian's pin or their moral virtue merit badge. And what I would argue is that the functional families are the ones you don't know, and that people do have a right to secrecy. And at a digital age, we need to either provide more grace or eventually we're going to find out everyone is a fucking horrible person, according to some blogger who makes a cartoon of someone's comments so they can dunk on them. So again, I go back to the same place. I want to see more criminal prosecutions and a lot more grace based on where they are in these concentric circles. Any other thoughts before we take a quick break, Jess?
I think that's a good place to end. I take back my mass, you're all terrible, and just say some of you are terrible. So got it off my chest.
There you go. Let's take a quick break. Stay with us. Support for the show comes from LinkedIn. It's a shame when the best B2B marketing gets wasted on the wrong audience. Like, imagine running an ad for cataract surgery on Saturday morning cartoons, or running a promo for this show on a video about Roblox or something. No offense to our Gen Alpha listeners, but that would be a waste of anyone's ad budget. So, when you want to reach the right professionals, you can use LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn has grown to a network of over 1 billion professionals and 130 million decision makers, according to their data. That's where it stands apart from other ad buys. You can target your buyers by job title, industry, company role, seniority, skills, company revenue, all so you can stop wasting budget on the wrong audience. That's why LinkedIn ads boast one of the highest B2B return on ad spend of all online ad networks. Seriously, all of them. Spend $250 on your first campaign on LinkedIn ads and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Just go to linkedin.com/Scott. That's linkedin.com/Scott. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back. What we're watching right now isn't just a Trump presidency. It's a Trump redesign of Washington itself. He's taken over the Kennedy Center, purged its board, installed himself as chairman, and is shutting it down to rebuild it as something he says will be more patriotic and less woke. At the same time, he's pushing a Grand Prix-style race through the streets around the National Mall, floating a UFC fight on the White House grounds, and backing a massive triumphal arc that would tower over the Lincoln Memorial. Culture, monuments, even public space. Trump isn't just governing D.C., he's branding it. Jess, is Trump's push to remake cultural institutions and monuments about ideology, fighting wokeness, or about his legacy, physically stamping his presidency onto the Capitol?
I think it's just all ego.
You think it's
Yeah.
real?
I mean, I think about, Jesse Waters, my colleague at Fox, tells a story about talking to Trump about the big, beautiful ballroom renovation and everything that he's doing to the White House, and he says to him, like, "Why are you doing it?" And he goes, "If I don't do it, who will?" And no one will, right? Because this is also not how it's supposed to happen. You're supposed to come to the people's house for your 4 years or your 8 years if you win re-election, and you're supposed to leave it basically as you found it with reasonable renovations that are necessary, and if you wanna quibble about a bowling alley here or there, we can, but in general, you are not supposed to demolish the thing and remake it, like, what did you say? Like an Iraqi whorehouse?
Yeah, the best whorehouse in Baghdad.
The best whorehouse in Baghdad, is in Washington, DC, folks. So I think it's all ego. That's the ego of wanting the branding aspect, but then also closing the Kennedy Center is about the ego of being so embarrassed that you're not selling enough tickets. So on average, it's about 57% full. That includes all of the comps that they're doing too, and the pay for play schemes that are going on with big business that, need to be on the right side of Donald Trump. You have performers canceling left and right. And I think it's just frankly a lot easier to say, we're not going to even be open for business and give yourselves 24 months to sort it out, I guess, or add all the steel. I think they're doing a big steel renovation. But yeah, it's two sides of the ego coin as far as I'm concerned. And it's just like it's a joke how insecure he is. I said this last week when we were talking about the Melania documentary and how embarrassing it is to be so comfortable with fake flattery all the time. And I say this as someone who loves a compliment. Sometimes some of them are fake even. But like I just can't imagine what it's like to be him and be in that mind. What do you think about Washington DC turning into Trump Inc.?
What I don't get is he's not ready or doesn't think there's gonna be the mother of all rebranding on January 21st, 2029. I mean, the first thing a new president is gonna do, unless it's Vance, is just, "Okay, we're calling this the Kennedy Center again." No, they're just gonna remove everything. I'd be shocked if they even leave his portrait
I
there.
think he wants to make it too difficult to get all of it down.
Yeah, it's all very strange, but the nation doesn't seem to be that offended about it, and I gotta be honest, I am so here for F1 DC. I think that would be awesome. Are you kidding? Those amazing machines zooming around the Washington Mont. I'd go to that. I think it would be
Around his Arc de Triomphe.
I think it would be, I gotta be honest, I love the idea of F1 in DC. I'm here for that idea. That's one thing I think you got the asymmetry around trade with China correct, and F1 DC. Those are the 2 things.
Those are the bright
Also
spots of the Trump administration for you?
yeah, so also removing Maduro in about 37 minutes, I was there. I'm here for that as well, but, occasionally he can't help but stumbling into something right, and I think F1 DC is it, but the other stuff is just it's just weird. Banners across the city with his face on them has been proposed, Trump accounts, national park passes with Trump's face.
I wanted to ask you about World Cup. Like,
Oh,
do you
no.
think that what?
People keep emailing me, "Are you still going to World Cup?"
Well, you come here and you're American, but I'm curious as to whether you think that people won't come. Because I've heard both schools of thought, right? Like, this is not gonna stop anyone, but some of the biggest sports fans in the world look like bad hombres, right, as far as ICE is concerned. And I went to World Cup in Russia and was nervous about that, and everything went great, actually, and Putin was on his best behavior, and the cities were beautifully done, and everyone had a fantastic time. But I'm wondering what you think the psyche of the soccer fans will be thinking about coming here when the US is in this kind of condition and foreigners have been detained.
That's right, I didn't know. I was in Russia as well. I was in Moscow and St. Petersburg. Which cities did you go to?
I did, St. Petersburg and Moscow too. I was at the Belgium semi in Moscow.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Oh, like on a TV, or we were in the same
With
stadium?
I think Lukaku played that game.
Yeah,
Yeah, and by the way, I thought Russia did a fantastic job, and I was glad I
it
went
was
because
so cool.
I can't imagine I'll be back in
And
Russia
now you can't
anytime soon.
go again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So,
St. Petersburg is arguably like if St. Petersburg got a new coat of paint, it'd be the most beautiful city in the world. And
well,
so,
when you're a city that's basically the best of every European capital mushed together,
yeah, it's a beautiful
they
city.
nailed all of it except the human rights stuff. I don't want to be too great about Russia, but it's beautiful.
But will people show up for the American World Cup or the North American World Cup? It's going to be in, I think, in 11 cities in Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. So I'll just use personal experience. I am not a fan of the nation of Qatar. They were the primary funder, as I understand it, of Hamas. And so I have real issues in the nation of Qatar. Oh, I was in Doha in a minute for the World Cup. And call me hypocritical, call me inconsistent, fine. I'll take those arrows. But the chance to go see the World Cup with my kids, and I think the majority of people who were planning to come, I think every game's going to be sold out except for the early rounds. I think there'll be some posturing. The beautiful game has such a call and resonance with people. I could not have been more disgusted with the ridiculous FIFA Peace Prize that went to Trump. I mean, oh, by the way, I've been nominated for the Taco Bell National Prize on Literature for my most
So
recent
you got
book,
a
Jess.
gold gordita?
There you go. The Bell. Oh my God, I used to get so high in college. We go to the Bell for
I've
29
never had
cents.
Taco Bell.
Oh, it's
Is
amazing.
it? I've heard that, and then some people are
You
like,
could
it's not
get
worth it.
you
I
could get a bean burrito for 19 cents in 1988, and when you just did like 8 bong loads and listened to Led Zeppelin with your buddies, it is literally the best tasting. It is the best tasting thing in the world. I love the Bell. Anyways, how did I get here? Oh, the Taco Bell National Prize in Literature. Oh, World Cup. Okay, here I am. We're back. Uh,
Hello.
so the International Olympic Committee, FIFA, there's these international athletic bodies that kind of operate in between the raindrops in sort of this netherland of laws, and they are so fucking corrupt. I mean, they are literally the griftiest of grift. But it doesn't stop me from going to the World Cup. I wasn't that excited. People were saying to me, "Are you sure you want to go to Russia?" I'm like, "It's going to be the safest place in the world. The last thing he's going to do is let anything happen to tourists." Qatar, huge funders of terror in the Middle East, not a great place. I was so there, and I think there's more people like me than not. And Kara gave me a bunch of shit for going. Oh, I'm so there, and I will be all over those. I will be in Monterrey, Mexico City,
I
Miami.
want to
I've
go to
already,
Mexico City. Yeah.
I've
I
already
love
lined
Mexico
up.
City.
I'm already kissing the ass of sponsors, trying to get invited to games because the whole thing is a giant corporate rub and tug. But
I
anyways,
love that.
a long-winded way of saying,
It'll
I
be
bet
no big
Jess
deal.
Tarlov is at the World Cup, and I bet everyone who was planning to go goes, and all the people sitting at home on their keyboards shaming all of us for going. Yeah, I get it. More power to you. It's not stopping us.
Okay.
All right, let's take a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Before we go, the Grammys showed just how influential Bad Bunny has become in this moment as stars wore ice out pins and turned the show into a rebuke of Trump's immigration crackdown. It was Bad Bunny who cut through, using the biggest stage in music to humanize immigrants and say plainly, "We are Americans."
We're not savage, we're not animals, we're not aliens, we are humans, and we are Americans.
Days before an all-Spanish Super Bowl halftime and already drawing attacks from Trump himself, Bad Bunny isn't just reflecting the cultural mood, he's shaping it, and the backlash tells you how much power that he carries. Jess, what makes Bad Bunny different from past celebrity activists? Is it the size of his audience? Is it his cultural identity?
Yes.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
say
that was
yes
an
to
easy
every.
one.
It's
Yes.
all of it. I mean, he's the most streamed artist of all time. I think how I don't want to say unapologetic because there's no reason to be apologizing for it, but the fact that he's going to do this all in Spanish and that he just continues to emphasize, and he had a good joke at the Grammys with Trevor Noah about how Puerto Rico is actually part of America, despite what people think, is just an important message right now. And I've seen some athletes commenting on it and how
Mm-hmm.
great it is as a signifier of what a melting pot America is. And I was really impressed. Roger Goodell was doing a press conference and was asked about Bad Bunny's Ice Out message and whether ICE would be operating at the Super Bowl. And so he went in a little bit on the levels of security and that we'd be working with the federal government as you do at every Super Bowl, but, don't expect anything different to be happening. And then he also just talked about how important Bad Bunny is and how excited he is for this opportunity. And Roger Goodell isn't doing anything that isn't going to make money, right? Like he's not trying to take some political stand. He knows where the future is headed and it's headed more in Bad Bunny's direction. And then I think adding on to it that Green Day is going to start things off like one of, if not the most liberal band right out there, is sending a message to MAGA land and the president himself that this is where he thinks the country is and actually the base for football. I mean, it usually has a reputation as being, more of a right-wing sport, obviously. And I don't know if you saw this breakdown that was flying around on social media of athletes and how they vote. And NFL has many more Republicans than the NBA does. Obviously, it was interesting. It was concentrated in a few positions, though, like kickers and punters and things like that. But I liked that Goodell stood up for the decision, and I'm excited for it.
Well, Goodell, they're smart. They realize if 50% of people under the age of 18 are non-white and football can be culturally tied to this unbelievably culturally resonant medium called music. It's just they're not doing it for morals. They're doing it for economics. There are more people who like Bad Bunny that are angry at Bad Bunny. I mean, it makes a ton of, more importantly, you want to hear about my first date?
Like ever?
Yeah, my first date.
Yeah.
Because I'll bring it back to this. So Maureen Burke, it was like, I think I was a junior or a senior in high school. I know this is going to come as a shock to you, but I didn't date a lot as a
Late
young man. I know
bloomer,
that's
but you've
very
made up for
surprising.
it.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe when I hit 80. But anyways, so she asked me out, and my friend Adam Markman, I called him. He was a total player, and he was dating this really good-looking girl named Patty McLaughlin, and I can say girl because we were all 16 and 17. I'm like, what are we doing? He's like, I got you covered. We're going to go to the Bruce Springsteen concert at the Great Western Forum, and it was $11 a ticket, which was a lot of money for me. And I was a box boy at San Vicente Foods, so I got my $22 in tips. I gave it to Adam. He bought 4 seats to see Bruce Springsteen. And the thing I remember about it was we walked in, and I was so excited. My mom was excited for me. My mom was desperately trying to get me laid because she realized it wasn't going to be easy. And so she gave me her credit card, and I went to this store in Westwood called At Ease, and I bought brown corduroys, a Ralph Lauren Oxford shirt, Basswegian penny loafers. I looked so good. And it was a relatively mild acne day for me, so I was feeling very confident. And we got to the Great Western Forum, and we literally went to the very top, like the last row in the corner in the rafters. And Adam and Patty were already there. And I remember looking at them, and I'm like, and I meant it. I'm like, these are such amazing seats. Look at how high we are. How did we get these seats? I had never been to a paid event.
Yeah.
So I thought the higher you were, the better the seats. And I was just really impressed that even though we'd spent $11, we were able to score such incredible seats. Anyways, Bruce
I love
Springsteen, it was
that.
his Darkness on the Edge of Town tour. And he went for like 3.5 hours. Anyways, that was my first
Amazing.
date.
Did you have a kiss?
I don't think so. You know what? I was so insecure and uncomfortable in my own skin and with myself that, like, unless the woman made it kiss me, I just couldn't. I was just very immature and scared and just not comfortable in my own skin. I didn't get a lot of action
It's okay.
in high school. I think that's
It's all a
actually
learning
probably a good
process.
thing. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Everyone
That's a
needs to
great
move.
first date, though.
Everyone, what was your first date?
Oh, I did, like, there was this place called the Pizza Box. It was a pizza place on Bleecker Street that we all went after school.
Bleecker Street. You're a total New Yorker.
Yeah. Yeah. I went to the Little Red Schoolhouse. Communism is in the name, right? So you would walk up Bleecker and go get a slice of pizza after. And so everyone was there, but you could kind of branch out into your little couples, right? Like there would be people sitting alone at a table, just the two of you. So my first date was just alone at a table. with a boy, and we liked each other. There was no kissing, but he paid for my slice, which was like a big deal.
That's a pretty big deal. But
Yeah.
you'd strike me as the kind of girl that in the 10th grade was going to senior prom with some cool senior.
I wouldn't call him. He ended up.
Oh, so I'm right.
No, he's not.
I didn't even go to
I'm
my prom.
conflicted about this. Anyway, I'm going to tell you actually who my first, for like a few months, went out with this boy who runs the Carbone food group.
Can you get us reservations?
Well, that's
I
the
hope
thing.
you guys
I've always
ended on
wondered
good
about this.
terms.
I mean, I took it well, I guess, where he was just basically like, yeah, summer's coming. I don't
He's done
really
well.
want to deal with you. And I was like, oh, but I thought we were getting married or whatever. And he's like, not so much. Anyway, so he ended up being very successful, and I enjoy eating in the restaurants, but I have never tried to tap back in, like, could I get a reservation?
No, we
And I probably should, because I would like to eat at Carbone more. Anyway, pizza box.
We gotta leverage that. All right, before we go, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to hear more about pathetic and less pathetic high school dating lives of your co-hosts.
They were both
Make
bad.
sure you hit subscribe. That's all for this episode. Thank you for listening to Raging Moderates. Jess, have a great week.
You too. See you later.